Okay, previous episode, I put up the bulkhead, decided against it, and took it back down, in favor of a hood casing and shelving instead. Since then, I've committed to the casing being some type of a stone veneer, so I'm opening up this wall. And this is so that I can add some reinforcements to handle the new weight, and at the same time take care of all the necessary electrical requirements. And now to figure out what's what. There's the main feed. This one is the carburetor. This one's coming out. That one needs to get tucked in so I can drive all over it. And same thing here. Needs to get rerouted for the drywall. I am temporarily putting up some plastic boxes for now, also inserting the extra studs, and then getting on with the rough wiring. I'm not really a fan of the way this house was wired originally. Everything that was hooked up was backstabbed, and the stapling is sloppy. More than a few wires with visible damage as a result. And as an added bonus, whoever installed the recessed lights left the original box live and intact. This is, of course, not allowed, and could have easily been addressed by just including it in the junction box, kept with wire nuts. I ended up bumping into it, not knowing what it was, so I guess I'm kind of lucky that the wires weren't stripped. Picked up some mud rings and some extra large boxes. So after attaching the box, popping the knockouts, fitting the clamps, and feeding and securing the wires, I'm drilling an extra hole for a second ground wire. One for the dining room light, and another for the range receptacle. Then I label the junction box and use a cut-up sheath to mark where things are going to and coming from. From there I hook up the receptacle, with the main feed going to the line and the load going to the range, starting with the ground, neutral, and hot. And yes, it does look like I'm installing these upside down, but not really. So receptacle configuration in accordance with diagram 1, where this is the receptacle, and you can see that the ground pin is up. But yes, most people prefer the stunned, creepy faces. So then all that's left is the testing. Which is all good. Similar deal on the single outlet by the sink, the outlet for the range hookup, and for the dishwasher, which was a wire coming out of just a hole in the drywall. I gave that a proper junction box and hooked it up to a BX cable so that it can be hardwired to the dishwasher. This stud here, I was going to drill a bunch of big holes into this thing, but I think what I'll do instead is attach a mounting piece next to it and drill into that. And that looks wedged into the cutout. And the lovely stapling continues. Another cut and abandoned one here. So I ended up adding a bunch of mounting piece and spacers here, along with 2 more outlets. One for the carburetor switch, and then a double for the receptacle and the shelf light switch. Speaking of shelf lights, the joists on this side are all drilled, and after a few more on the other side, I fit the wire through down to the junction box. That's the end of the LED line. Those markings on the stud are where I need to drill for the floating shelves. Anyways, it passes through the stud up there. This is LVT wire, by the way, 18.2. Mostly used for thermostats because you can't just run any wire behind the drywall. But anyways, it runs down along here, and it actually goes behind the box, not through, and down along the side of the stud into this junction box. And then it continues through the middle cable. The top is for the carburetor, but the middle just terminates in here for now. The receptacle's not hooked up. Last thing is to run another line from this box to somewhere up there for the range hood. I don't actually know where this line is going to end up, so I'm going to punch through the joist and the top plate for now, but I'm not hooking it up to anything yet. All done. So they both go up from here. The one going to the right is for the dining room light, and then this one is for the range hood. So this is the old layout with 4 receptacles and 2 switches with the carburetor and the dining room light. Main feed coming in from the wall with 2 hots, one for the receptacle and the other for the switch that power the carburetor. Second main from the wall with 2 hots, one for the receptacle there, but the other went back up the wall through the bulkhead and came back down to power this one, which I later properly rerouted through the joists. Third main with 1 hot from the right for that receptacle with a parallel branch for the dining room light. So that was the old. So here's the new with an additional junction box and a driver, which is that empty outlet under the sink for now, and then the range hood. Same source feed with 2 hots, one for the receptacle while the second goes to the other side for that receptacle. And from there, the load goes to the range. Now ideally, you want this countertop to have a dedicated circuit, but in this case, I felt it was fine because the range is not electric. It's gas, and the only thing that it needs electricity for is the igniter, the fan, and the lights. All combined, pretty much a non-factor. Second source feed with 2 hots, one for the receptacle, and the other, I split this into 2. One going to a switch to power the carburetor, while the other is going to the driver, then back up the wall, through the joists, down to the other side to power all the LED lights under the shelves. So again, I'm playing with the tolerances here. The carburetor definitely needs its own circuit. However, the total power draw for all 15 LEDs is less than 45 watts. So 120 volts at 15 amps is 1800 watts. 45 out of 1800 is 2.5% of the load. I think it's fine. Last feed, still from the right, still powers that receptacle, and it still parallels to power the dining room light, but now with an additional parallel for the range hood. I've left out the island, the microwave, and the main ceiling because they're not actually part of this wall. They've got their own circuit. So there it is. That wraps up the electrical for the south wall. Next episode is the range hood selection and the makeup air system testing. Until then, that's about that.